Okay, I'm Scott Fitzke, location manager in Lexington.
Hey Carl, CTS here in Hastings.
Okay, this is the SeedStar 4 class, ExactEmerge or electric drive planters. So you obviously know by now that you have to run this off of either a 4600 command center in a tractor or a 4640 standalone monitor. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get into a bunch of different functions here. So we'll just show you a few ways here. There's a lot to go through. We can't exactly go through them all. The one thing we'd like to point out on this simulator, that you can go to myjohndeere.com and log in, and you can get this same simulator and mess around with it as much as you want, so you don't screw anything up later or have a good idea. So just starting a little bit with the simulator, he's turning on the planner with the functions to get it going. PTO generator. We'll get it started here. Okay, starting off. First starting off with, go back to that screen. Starting off with the main menu. First of all, you've got to set up your home pages, and you can go into main menu, applications, and then layout manager. And there will be default run pages in there for the planner, and you've got to put them in an active set. So you can go back to that run page, go down and see if you can find one that says unused. Go ahead and make one then. So if you make one, you name it planner, 2020. And then you can go into add module and add your SeedStar. There's a lot of different options you can select here. I just get a bigger one for right now. And you can move it around, do whatever you want, and then you can, if you've got room, you can add more. But we'll just leave that. We can just leave that for now. So now we've did that planner 2020, and it says unused. So we've got to get it in our active set. So if we go back to active set, and then we click there, and then hit add run page, that unused 2020 is in there. So that's how we're going to get that run page in there. And hit save. So now we've got 7 run pages in there. Also, what you can do is shortcut bars. We can change, like you can take that quick line out. Not a lot of people use that too much. And then we can add a SeedStar function like the fast start. Fast start is what, if you had an old John Deere planter, that was basically the same thing as it used to be. Go ahead and exit out of there. Okay, so the planter, we'll start off on this planter run page. The population is viewed up there. If you click inside that box, you can go and select other rates. So you can have up to 5 rates, and then the 6th one's your prescription, just like if you had an older John Deere planter. To go in and change those rates, you'll hit edit rates, and you can put in whatever you want for just say a dryland population there. And that box has to be unchecked for the rate to be enabled. And there's your prescription rate. If you select that, that's going to take you back into the work summary page, and you will select the rate, and then you can go in and find your prescription right here. if it's loaded in there. But you either have to have the prescription loaded or the controller rate loaded in there. So. No, you do not have to shut the other ones off. Just you can have all 6 of those rates turned off. So, okay. Another thing, the arrow with the dot on the top. There is some settings in there, and Nate to get into those a little bit later. But anytime you see an arrow with the dot, you can go into that. Okay, so your population, it's down. Right now, it's down below right here. Your planter at a glance, like probably what you're used to, is right there. This box right here is what you call a turn compensation. It will change shapes or colors. Like when you're turning on the ends and going around a curve, it will speed up and slow down some of your rows, so you end up with the correct population. And you can turn that on and off. We'll show you later how to do that. So go back to the bricks there. Okay, so that's the population box. You can go into the gauge wheel. So the gauge wheels are basically your downforce margin. So the way this is currently set up, with the hydraulic downforce option, because we've got sensors on all of our rows right there. So it's giving a reading of our margins. So again, there's another class on downforce margin and all that, but downforce margin, our target margin is 100, so that means we're trying for 100 pounds on those back row unit gauge wheels. So it's got a weigh pin in each one of those row units. So that's what it is weighing off of. So even though you might be putting 250 down, depending on how hard it is or how much you're using on your row cleaner, that's why it's measuring the amount of pressure up on those wheels. You can click that box right there, and you can change it. So you've got either active, on, or off. When it is off, that is the old way that if you had a little bit older planter and you didn't have any active downforce, and you were just changing the air pump in it. So if you were putting 300 down, that's the same basic number. So you're putting 300 down, it's set, you don't have to do anything else. One of the reasons why you would maybe change it from active to inactive, or on or off there, is if you have a bad sensor on one of those rows. Those weigh pins, if one of them goes bad and it's going all over the place and you just want it to be constant, you want to plan and fix it in the morning or at night. So when you go ahead and, when you change the alarms, when you're on off, you can change your target margin. You can change that to whatever you want. A lot of people run, I'm going to tell you, between 70 and 100. I think universities in the 70 to 80 range. It's your preference on your sidewalk compaction. So, if you change that there, when he changed that, now if he goes back to, so he's got 110 in there. So now our center line is at 75, and it's reading really high because we need to go in and change it back down. So I don't know if this simulator, so now they're coming down. Okay, so when we have that in active, we have it on, and we change that target margin. So we change it to 115, our alarm, so our center line on that graph changes with it. So it's at 115, and it's going to try and maintain that 115 all the time. It will change each of those rows each time. So Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Next box going down, go back and gauge wheels. Your ground contact right there. And that's your ground contact, that's how much you're holding it on the ground. So you want that obviously to be as high as possible. That next box there is your actual downforce. So again, the old way of looking at it, if you had 300 pounds on it, that would be the reading, even though you're only getting 115 pounds of margin. So, and population's still down at the bottom there, so go back up to the bricks there. Next box over is row cleaners. So the row cleaners, first thing you need to do is you need to set them down. So that sets them down, and then you've got all kinds of pressures there. And then the boxes to the right, you've got a preset of each of those. So each time if I change that number 1, when I'm selected on 1 and I change one of those boxes in there, it will save it until you change it again. So if I want to hit number 2 and I want to say I'm going into a pivot corner and I want to get down into some moisture, put those row cleaners down, I can just hit 1 and 2 or flip back and forth, so I can move the row cleaners really quick. It's not like you got to go in and change those pressures all the time. You just hit 1 button. So go back into changing them. So the row cleaners, so you've got a wings down, center down, a all up pressure. So you can go down to the bottom and sync the wings and the center together, which that's what most people do. I don't know too many people that run them different. Unless, you have a frame problem, I guess. That'd be just hiding it. So on the airbags on the row cleaners, you've got a down pressure, and it's a little bit bigger bag, and then you've got an up airbag pressure. So what you can do with those pressures, the more you have them closer together and the higher you've got them, like if you want them just to skim and blow through a wad of trash when it hits it instead of right up over it, the more you've got those pressures closer together, the more it will do that. The less, so like if you have, otherwise, if you have 50 pounds in the down and 0 in the up, you're going to be plowed. So just give you an example there. So exit out of that. So that's it for the row cleaners. Go back up into there. Okay, so the next box down is our singulation. So this will give your multiples and your skips. Center lines, obviously 0, or 100%. It's trying, so your multiples are on your top. You can see that little double seed symbol right up there. And your skips are down below. And then it will give your which row is good and bad on each one of them. So if you got a row that's constantly causing you trouble, you'd want to maybe go back there and do something with it. Let's see here, go back into the, anytime you're like in the singulation and the population down there, you can click that and you can dive deeper into one of the rows, and you can see for row 4, your target population, your actual, your spacing, and a bunch of, it's just a quick way to see the row. Downforce margins on there. So go ahead and go back to the bricks again. Okay, so the next box is your seed spacing. So this is your coefficient of variation. So what you're after there is a lower than a 0.35. That's where you start to lose. When you're above that, that's when you start to lose your yield on that. you know, most generally you're going to probably run in the 0.2 to 0.3 pretty easily on an ExactEmerge planter. So, you understand? Or do you have any questions on that or not? Okay. And again, it gives you the highs and lows of each one of them. So, go ahead and go back to the bricks. And the next one over. So looking at your singulation. So there's your percent of singulation off across the whole planter. There's your seed spacing across the whole planter. The next box over is your closing wheels. So some of the planters you might not have it, but some of them have a option for the closing wheels to be adjusted from the cab. I'm not 100% sure when you have a group 1 and 2 if it's left and right. You just have to play with it and find it out. But you know, obviously, you know, you're going to start if you got real loose dirt, you're going to start them really light, and if you got heavy, or I mean like no-till, you're gonna probably put a lot of force on them. So, or you know, and you can sync the groups up together. So. Okay, and then let's see here. And again, when you're in that page there, you've got those, the population is always down there at the bottom. You can still click on any of those rows just like we did before, and go in and check out one of those rows. Your green boxes down below are your row sections. So for your section control for rows turning on and off. So next, Nate is going to go into the tools, what some of the things that you can do and can't calibrate and stuff like that.
All right, before we actually jump on the tools, I'm going to hit the one last thing on this page over here in this corner. So the first time we come in, I know we hit it up there at the top, but we'll want to turn on, click that icon. We want to make sure we turn on active downforce. So every time you have a key cycle, you want to come back in here and re-enable that so you're not running that off. So kind of like how we have the pieces of the pie for auto track. We have the same thing here with that icon up there. When we're actually running, we'll see all those pieces filled in, and that icon will be green. So close out of that. And then to make quick adjustments, you can actually click in this area. You'll get another box where you can use your plus and minus to make those quick adjustments going through the field. The pause box, not used probably too commonly, but if you get to an area of the field that you do not want that hydraulic downforce to chase an adjustment really fast, maybe that's through a pivot track or some other condition in the field, you can click the pause button, and that'll basically start a timer up there to where it's basically just going to lock those cylinders in to the exact point that they're at. So we do have the ability to change, we'll see here in a second, we'll have the ability to change the increment level. So if you want a finer increment in your adjustments rather than 10 pounds, you can change that. And then we'll be able to change pause times and a few other alarms and things like that. So yep, we can also type that in there. From here, let's jump into those tools. We've got a whole list of them. Okay, so we're starting at the top there, seed and alarm setup. So we've seen a little bit of this earlier. We'll just go through all these. In here from our seed side, we do have our seed disc option. So depending on what we select out of our list, we'll have all sorts of different options here. We just want to make sure that matches with what we actually have in the planner. And then that'll give us the holes expected per disc. Yes, sir.
Do you have E-sets when you just study a custom disc?
So you wouldn't have E-sets on this planer. This would be the ExactEmerge.
He could if he had an electric drive.
Oh yeah, I guess just the electric drive planer you could.
Yes. You could, but you can put a custom hole disc in here. This is kind of set up for ExactEmerge right now.
Okay, because I saw you had a custom disc, and I'm figuring that was what it was.
Yep. You could go there and then put in 30 holes.
That's all you want.
Yep, that's all, and then that would work.
Alright, we'll change that. This is a little bit redundant, but we'll go over here to the crop type. We're changing that. They give you a little shortcut here to go to your work setup, which would be, normally you'd access that in the lower left-hand corner of your initial run page. But in here, we can go and change that crop type. Let's say if we're going from corn to soybeans, we'd pick that off the list. Up further?
It's froze.
Oh. Alright, so there that would change over. We hit OK. We'll jump back and then we'll see that soybean plate show up again with the expected number of holes in that disc. So that's narrowed that list down for us. You're only going to see the full list the very first time you select that crop, unless you go down to show all those crop types. Now, if we went back to change it, we would just have corn and soybeans in there. Next tab over is our product alarms. These are the default numbers. This is what we've been used to seeing in all the previous versions of SeedStar. This is just their default numbers of where you're going to start seeing those alarms start to beep at you. For anything from population, singulation, and then your seed spacing. Gauge wheels is our last tab up here. Again, we kind of see some of those warning marks that we have preset, preloaded for downforce. Close out of there. Next one down is our planter setup. Typically, most of these things would have already been entered in when we did our initial setup. The biggest thing I would stress here, really, whether it's the tractor or the planter, is that everything is measured up properly. The Gen 4 monitors do a really good job on showing you a picture of the tractor with the description of what they expect to be measured up and how they want you to measure those up. If we get into, let's go into one of these just to show them that. If we click this, each time we see this eye icon, we click on it and we're in something specifically, it will take you to that point of the operator's manual and give you that description of exactly what it means. So if you're ever unsure, that's a real fast, easy way to go in and just get a little bit of a bigger description of what Deere is expecting. Next button, we'll go back. So ultimately, again, we just want a new measure up on a new pieces of equipment. We're doing this in the shop or on the farm and helping you guys out with that. We can cancel out of there. So initially, we're basically just telling the main information of what's there is what to expect for a planter, what our measurements are, and what's all there behind us. We jump into frame control. So we've got a few different options here. We've got our manual control mode to fold and unfold the planter. And we also have easy fold. So with the automation functions, and not on a planter, we do have easy fold that we'll basically set it up the first time, tell it what SCVs we have assigned with what functions on the planter, and then it's going to do the folding essentially for us. I'd say the majority of them we have around here are manual. I don't know, any of you guys have easy fold? Okay. So normally here we would just unfold, go into the plant mode, and then we'd have the ability, if we had markers, we could adjust our markers from there too. The last thing on this list is we do have the ability here to turn on and off the frame weight distribution, if you have that function on the planter and that option. Planter runoff. Have to lift the planter back up. All right, so now that we have those options that show up, this is really a great area for you to go in to do a couple things. Now we can really break down these meters quite a bit more. In the past, we always had to pull meters off, take them in and put them on a test stand if we wanted to do any performance tuning or see if we had to do any kind of troubleshooting. Because of the sensors that we have on our row units now, we have the ability to run off those meters and look at the performance. So if we jump into this first one, this first test, let's say we've got a meter that we think is giving us some grief. So I can run off that one meter, I can pick its row, give it a population, seed, and number of total seeds I want it to run off, and it's basically going to run a countdown for me. I'll run off all those seeds, and then we can look and see, much like we would on a test stand, the performance of that meter. Great way to break those meters down and do tests right there. It could be in the middle of the field. Rows is somewhat similar to this. We're just going to see the overall performance. We get a little bit more information as far as if we've got ExactEmerge, if we want to see voltages or RPMs, if everything's running freely as it should be. We can see that information. Again, we would put in the row, target population, the test speed that we want it to run, and start the test. Any of these tests is worth pointing out. This Gen 4 is awesome about this. It's going to give you the instructions to do just about anything on this display. So you're not missing a step along the way or struggling with that. The last tab is the planter tab. So if we want to, this is an easy way to run off the whole planter. If we're changing varieties or seed types, instead of going and emptying out all those hoppers and kind of having to mess with that, you can go out there, throw some buckets underneath, and run off all those rows. So we just turn off our central fill, and then just run the meters off the rest of the way. Questions on that? There, that's better. Sorry. There is a mobile runoff option if the planter is equipped with that, and we can perform those same functions on an iPad. So that is an option that's out there if you want to do everything from the back of the planter. Planter diagnostics and calibrations. There's going to be a few things that we're going to want to do in here. There is a whole lot of diagnostics under this screen. But I really don't have time to jump through all of them. We can come back to them if somebody wants to see one specifically. But more importantly, we could jump really into any of these up there that we'd like to. You can just pick one, it really doesn't matter. Like page wheel down for us, be a good one. So from here, we're really starting to dive into diagnostics to help us troubleshoot something on the planter. So if we have an issue going on and we want to look further into it, we can use this to help guide us along the way. More importantly, because we've got a load cell in this planter on every single row, we want to make sure that those load cells are performing properly, since that's really going to determine our adjustments we're going to have as far as how much weight we're applying with those hydraulic cylinders, and ultimately that's what's going to determine if we've got that row unit at depth. So it's a good idea to come in here either from the diagnostic side or the calibration side and zero out these load cells. This would be the same way that we would have done it in the past on other planters, whether we had a pneumatic system. If we come in here, same thing. It gives you the steps that you need to do to complete that. Planter in the air, stop. It's going to run through and zero out all those sensors for you. If we have one that's bad, it's going to tell us that we have an issue with it. But other than that, we should always expect to see those resting at zero with the planter in the air. Over here on the right-hand side, we also get the option to disable and uncheck a particular row. If we're having grief with the row unit, we want to get through that field, get through the rest of the night so we can get a new one on there. that would be something you could go and do and say, hey, I want to take this out of the equation, and we're just going to go ahead and keep running that night. So you've got that option, or to disable the automatic function and adjust those manually.
Is that tied to the other road?
I believe what it will do is when you shut that off, it's just going to run off of, like an average of the planter for the field. That's what I was explaining to you a long time ago when we first started these. So it doesn't exactly say that. So, but if you, like I said before, if you wanted to, you could turn active off if you didn't trust it and just go into a manual mode and keep planting. So.
Again, like I said, all sorts of diagnostics. Most of those are going to break out voltage readings, sensor readings. It's really going to break that information down quite far. So if you have a height issue, you might want to jump into height and dive in a little bit further. Machine speeds. The next one down is calibrations. We're really only going to see a couple on here. One of those that we just did was that gauge wheel downforce, and it's going to show us the last tape that we calibrated. Again, this is a really easy test to do in the mornings. There's a whole lot that runs behind that, or there's a whole lot of effect that could happen behind it, so I would suggest doing it often. It just gives you a good feeling that everything is zeroed out and starting properly at the beginning of the day. The height sensor calibration, this is typically a once a season calibration. You walk through, again, it explains the whole process for you. If we select that box, it's going to tell us basically what we need to do. Unfold the planer, fully raised, fully lowered, and it's going to tell you whether or not it accepted the calibration. We do have the runoff procedure that's in here. It's very similar to the last one that we talked about. More importantly, I want to talk about this valve flush test. We do talk about that. I know the guys do over there in the downforce session. But the first time we hook up this planner, the air purge test, the first time we hook up this planner, we really want to make sure that we have no air in the hydraulic lines. So, first time we hook it up, if we do any maintenance or unhook those SCVs for any reason, we want to make sure that we come in here, we hook the hoses up properly at the end of the planer, and then run through this procedure. The other thing to note here, and it tells you, we need to have some temperature in that hydraulic fluid before we start everything off. So, tells you there we got to have 2,700 psi, we got to have some engine RPM, so we've got to be running to complete this. Yeah, it doesn't exist. Okay. Bounce back out of there. We can jump into there. So the diagnostic center is the overall tractor diagnostic center that you can normally access through your menu under the systems tab. And as we break these down, we can jump into the specific controllers, or if we have trouble codes on here, something worth mentioning is just like the tractors now, because of the electronics that we have in the planner, we can really break it down to a much finer level to figure out what's going on. We're no longer playing that guessing game. So instead of just having a code like we used to have, now it tells us exactly what the system is and what's going on. So we've got a good guide to get us in the right direction if we're trying to diagnose and figure out what's going on. Close that out.
Vacuums.
Yep. So the EPG, if you've got, there'll be two options. Either it'll be ran off PTO or hydraulically. If we click on this, I think the simulator is PTO. Yep, so if we dive in a little bit further, we'll see that speed. There really isn't a minimum speed that we have to run. If it's off of a PTO, you can sit there at idle and they act just fine. Most of the time through the field, you're going to be at a high enough RPM that's really irrelevant. Just like the alternator in your car, it's going to adjust depending on what RPM it's at. I've never really seen one give a warning. If you do happen to turn on the EPG button before you start your PTO, it's going to beep at you. No big deal. Come in here, turn it off, clear your faults, and then go back, turn the PTO on, engage your EPG, and you'll be set. Blasting here quickly. Under the vacuum, we'll see our vacuum numbers for all three of them there. Right now, it shows us that we're in a manual mode. So, to adjust these, we would have to go in our SCVs and adjust our flow rates to achieve that. We do have the option to automate this. You can only do so much in the simulator, but if I have this in an automated mode, the very first time we set this up, we'll select that, automated, go to next. And the biggest thing here is we want to make sure that we have the right vacuum set up with the right SCVs. Now you can go, they're different, you can go change them and move them around, or just edit them in the settings down here at the bottom. What that's doing is it's really telling the tractor which SCVs it needs to use to run that vacuum. Next one here, the last thing it's really going to do before it totally kicks over, it's going to tell you to set that at a rate of 7 as a good starting point. And then from there it's going to try to automatically adjust when you first put that system on. We'll cancel, otherwise it'll lock up our simulator.
Then from there you will have, if you have an automated, you will control the, if you want 20, there'll be a box here, you put like 20 pounds and it will automatically adjust. So.
Is that 1, 2, 3 go left and right?
Say again?
Is that 1, 2, 3 go left and right?
Yeah, typically left to right. Yep.
What planner are you talking about? Yeah, one, 2 would be, yeah, one would be out of left.
Always left and right. The other thing is, you can, as part of the setup, we really kind of breezed over it. Depending on which row that was installed on, that's in part of the planner setup. So that initially it's something we'll set in the shop before it ever goes out. We confirm it's in the right area, we zero the sensors out. Good questions.
It's right there.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's got to know the right row that it's on.
I think we got all of it. Any other questions? We kind of throw it at you pretty fast. This class, there's a lot to cover and a whole lot of options. We got to hurry through to hit our